Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody is alive and not sleeping because we had a very complicated day. So for the next panel, so I will try to animate the panel with the six wonderful people. We have normally online Oliver Ganser.
To check, maybe you should check.
Do we have Oliver online? Eric?
Absolutely, I'm here.
Okay. So, hello, Oliver, because I don't see you, in fact. Yeah, okay. So the point now of the panel is to explain. So we had the points coming from legislation, we had points coming from different ministers and so on. And the point of the panel is to explain to you that this is real. So the point is really business, this is real. And we have, and all these wonderful people will explain to you what they are doing in their fields. And the point of data exchange is really crucial and important for every sector. So let's start, and please, for all the panelists, we have discussed to the time. So please do not be not lengthy because otherwise it will take too long time. So the first question is for you, Véronique. So you are at the head of the operational and transformation efficiency of EDF. And the point is to understand what is at stake for you, for your sector, for data. What are the key points and the key challenges?
Well, let me first thank you, Martine, for your invitation. You asked me about the context. EDF is an energy company, and our major stake is to build a net zero energy future with electricity and innovative solutions and services. Electricity will play a major role in energy transition, and we will build that net zero energy future by switching our usage from fuel to electricity. And we will build that future by giving all customers the opportunity to be actors. And we will build that future by providing the most cost-effective and carbon-free electricity. And in France, 96% of the EDF production is carbon-free thanks to nuclear and renewable. And both decarbonization and electrification will require more digital and more data. And we will have more and more data with smart meters, smart grids, smart homes, smart charging for electric vehicles. And data will help monitor and pilot energy demand. So let me illustrate with a couple of examples. First, energy consumption self-monitoring. Last winter, with a better understanding of their energy consumption, French consumers have saved up to 10% on their electricity consumption. EDF customers have access to an application that provides them their detailed energy consumption, and they can compare it to similar households. And it both helps customers reducing their consumption, and it helps energy transition. And you can imagine that you need a lot of data to do that. Now, second example, electric mobility and smart charging. Imagine all electric vehicles that come back, are plugged at the same time and start charging their battery at the same time. It will increase the electricity demand, and it will increase the electricity peak around 7 p.m. On the contrary, if electric vehicles are mainly charged when electricity is abundant, when generation from solar and wind farms is high, or when the demand is low at night and we have a generation from nuclear, then we will reduce the energy demand peak. So if we can intelligently control the charging of electric vehicles, we will both take full advantage of periods when electricity prices are the most attractive, and it will support the transition to electric mobility. So, and smart charging could also turn parked vehicles in an energy reservoir thanks to their batteries. So with the customer acceptance, we could provide the power stored in the battery to the grid and recharge their battery later. So you can imagine that this would request real-time data, either on battery charge level or on the power generation level. And sharing this kind of data on a cross-sector basis will help energy transition, and that's exactly what data spaces can bring. There would be a lot of other examples. Energy transition needs data sharing, and that's why at EDF we support Data-Act, we support data space initiatives from European Commission, from the French government, and we support European Action Plan on digitalizing energy systems, and we are part of use cases on energy data space, Martine.
Thank you, Véronique. And I think I know the people that work on that point on energy.
Sure you do.
Next speaker is Sébastien. So we have heard the view of a big player, and now it's interesting to hear your view because you represent agriculture with a lot of small players and also some big players.
Thank you, Martine. So Agdatahub is a private company owned by the farmers' organization with 55% of the capital and 45% by the French government through the Caisse des dépôts et des consignations and Imprimerie Nationale. It was to answer to the question just before. And the goal, 5 years ago, all the farmers' organizations said, okay, we are in front of 400,000 farmers, sometimes to be in connection with 4 major companies in agro suppliers like Bayer, BASF, Syngenta or Corteva, or sometimes with a big global company in machinery like John Deere. And all these major companies collect lots of data from the farmers. And they made some business with that. And we, as the small and medium companies, we want to keep the control of our data in order to increase or improve our revenue. And that's why the goal of Agdatahub 5 years ago was to interconnect 10 million farmers with 500,000 partners, upstream and backstream, but keeping the control of their data. And that's why we really think 5 years ago that we were, just before it exists and before DGA and DA, one of the first data intermediary in theory in order to interconnect farmers and their partners. Why it is important? I have 2 main examples. Imagine you have some cows in Lozère on Corrèze. You are a small farmers, and every day you have to milk your cattle, and you use a milking robot. Okay, you have 2 major companies, one red, one blue. I don't tell the name of these companies, and they collect data, but I did not have access to this data. What's going on with this data? The data are transferred on an AWS cloud providers in Germany. Sorry for our colleagues from Germany. And after the data are stored there on AWS hyperscalers, and then data are transferred in the for ER processing in Israel in order to calculate some thing with the data coming from the farms, and the results are sent to a US lab on the other side of the Atlantic Oceans in order to help them to make their sustainability report. And all the value of this data were not for the farmers in Corrèze or on Lozère in the center of France, but on the other side of the Atlantic Oceans. What was the worst thing is that these farmers didn't have access to the raw data from the milking robot. He cannot share their data with the private advisor or his advisors from the Chamber of Agriculture in the next village. Okay, so first of all, it is not it was impossible for farmers to accept that. Second thing is harvesting timing. You all know during summer, you can see harvesting time with the harvesting machines. And one of the major companies use the data. So they collect data not only for machinery preventive maintenance, but also to know the quality and the quantity of the crops. And they have an overview about all what's going on all over the world, and they can use this data and sell this data to international merchants who use then on the Chicago Board of Trade, where the price of the corn and soybean are determined. So this is the revenue of the farmers which are in place. So what is important, and that will be the end for the farmers here, is to keep the control of their data, and after that, not to stop sharing data, but to share data in a trustful environment and with transparency and trust. That's why we totally support DGA and Data-X, even if it's not perfect.
Thank you, Sébastien. So up to you, Oliver. Thank you for being with us. So we have heard the world of energy and also the world of agriculture. And now, you are at the head of Catena-X, which is the first data space related to automotive. So, can you explain to us what is Catena-X and also what are your main challenges? And also because I'm a little bit curious, and I discussed with you during so this week, and the point is to know when you are going live, and how long did it take to you to going live?
Sound is okay? Perfect. So Catena-X, as you just mentioned, started as a Central European initiative from automotive industry partners like an OEM, a first tier, a second tier like BMW, Volkswagen, but now also Stellantis and Renault, Valeo, but also the other side like SAP, Siemens, software providers, because we came to the conclusion after COVID and very many logistical issues that a peer-to-peer connection between one partner and the other does no longer serve our business need. We need data chains in order to have a business process completely covered. So if everyone looks only at a fraction of a business problem and our industry problem, if you want to calculate a CO2 emission of our product, for example, if you want to do circularity, that we want to bring parts back into the value chain in the supply chain, if you want to solve logistical problems, we need more than two parties to work with each other. And that's why Catena was created. With 28 partners initially, now we are 166 partners, and we are global right now. Because we believe, and this is where Catena, the word is derived from Latin, stands for chain. We want to create data chains for our automotive industry to go from a raw material supplier to a first tier supplier to an OEM down to a recycler. That's how we started. We started in middle of 2021. And after 2 years now, of initial development and getting every single piece of a data space together, we learned many people have fragments of a solution, but to have a data space, you need all parts. You need a business you need a business need, you need an architecture, you need technology, you need policies. I think that was talked about before. You need you need frameworks from a legal side of view that work in one country and can be scaled to the others. So we put this all together, and our hope, and we're working on very much on this now, is that we go live in middle of October. And that means the data space is then accessible to all partners of the automotive industry to join us and build with us those data chains in order to solve our problem as industry: sustainability, circularity, material flow, but also quality and other issues. And that's, I think, the interesting thing is because we build everything on open source. It is something that we see now, since it's a very holistic approach with all layers, what I just mentioned, that other industries see that what it takes to build a data space, what the benefits are. And we see right now that other industries and sectors would like to use what we created in open source and the frameworks and adapt it to their industries as well.
Thank you, Oliver. So, October. So, we are waiting
16th. To be
15.
precise.
15. So we will follow on October 15. So next to you, Oscar. So you are also deeply involved in the industry. You will explain that, and also in data management within Europe. So you have heard Véronique, Oliver, Sébastien explaining to us what are the big challenges of their industry. Could you explain to us what you think of these challenges, and also from not only an European point of view, but from an international point of view?
Thank you. And well, I guess Olivier was the perfect introduction to that question, as well as with Véronique. If one thing is clear, is that this effort that was initiated by Catena-X, allowing this end-to-end integration in terms of horizontal integration is a big effort. And now, as Olivier was explaining, is actually trying to involve and to expand this initiative across Europe and probably across the world itself, not just Europe, at least from the conversations we have had. But the situation is that it's not only automotive that is dealing with this type of challenges in terms of ecological transition, in terms of energy efficiency, CO2 footprint. Many other sectors are actually trying to solve these challenges, and now they have evidence, at least first evidence, and they realize that data sharing could be really an instrument to make that happen. It is something that the first embryonic or pioneer data spaces, they have opened a path. And I think now, and that is why this initiative that was funded by the European Commission, that is called Data Space 4.0, was initiated. We have to look it beyond one sector. In manufacturing, we have to realize that inside the manufacturing, we have many different industries that are working together. And also, we are in a point in time where we have heard that very significant investments are going to be made at the national level by private industry and by public industry. And one of the big challenges that we face now, and why all this coordination action was started, is that we have probably the opportunity now to create, and I will be very careful with the word, a unified voice on how to do it. Not a unique voice, but a unified voice. And this is really the challenge that we have in front of us. How we all fulfill our individual goals, our individual projects at the national level, at sectoral level, but we keep this sort of umbrella view that allow us to work across sectors, across countries. And this is really why the Data Space 4.0 initiative was created. From the Data Space 4.0, I think now more international view are actually being discussed in the context of an international council for manufacturing X, basically because manufacturing and manufacturing chains are actually international. If we listen to Olivier, you start from the raw material, you end up with your circular approach, trying to recover very expensive materials or scarce elements that you want to repair or remanufacturing. All this really relies on the effective and trusted exchange of data of quality and data that is actually trusted by all the stakeholders. Because at the end of the day, the manufacturing industry is an industry that is actually changing. So new business models are actually being created by data, but we have to remember that manufacturing is about creating goods that are going to be either consumed. So how we do this in a cost-effective and efficient way, how we include the whole ecosystem. Remember that we are not talking about only tier one, that these bilateral agreements that Olivier was referring usually are made between the OEMs, tier one. In all the sectors, we have tier two, tier three, tier four. And the more we move down the tiers, we have very specialized companies that are adding a lot of value to the manufacturing process, but probably companies that are small in size, and they also need to be part of all this initiative. So from my point of view, this is the big challenge that we have, how we coordinate all these investments that are going to be made from the public side, from the private side, so we can really work in this unified message. So we all fulfill our own business strategies, but at the same time, we create some of these economies of scale that we have discussed during the day.
Thank you, Oscar. We understood well. This is very ambitious. In fact,
Yes.
This is very ambitious because all the manufacturing industries and at international level, we all understood that it is very ambitious. And back to you, David. You are at the head of Aéroports de Paris, but it's not, not at the head of the IT system of Aéroports de Paris. Perhaps you are the next boss of Aéroports de Paris. Who knows? Who knows?
I don't want any problem.
But the point is, you are here to describe what you are doing at the head of Aviation Association. I understood that you have a clear target related to Olympic Games in Paris next year.
Yes, indeed. So Catena-X is a data space for mobility, transportation, and tourism. It was founded by Amadeus, Air France, SNCF, Renault, Marseille Airport, ADP Group, Apidae, and we are joined by Any Solution and Innovalia. And I have to say, I'm really happy to be here today because I love talking about data spaces, but usually people don't like it when I talk to them about data spaces. In my company, and it's true for all members of Catena-X, when you talk to someone in your company about data spaces, you have three kinds of reaction. First, the person looks for an exit and tries to flee the conversation. Second, they smile, they try to be polite, but they have no idea what's going on. And third reaction, which is not so uncommon, is that people tend to be a bit, scared or reluctant. What are you talking about? Are you going to put our data in a space so that other people will be able to access it? Don't you know it's dangerous, that data have value, actually? And it's a bit of an ambiguous reaction. On the one hand, it's bad because obviously we're not doing that. But on the other hand, it means that people are really becoming more and more conscious of the value of data. And one of the key elements in our companies, it's true for SNCF, Air France, Renault, you name it, is that we are able to share data with other companies as long as we are absolutely sure that the data will be used in a very limited way, the way we agreed upon. And before the existence of data spaces, we noticed that when we were able to share data with companies that were competition or some sort of rough partners, when we started to sign NDAs, it's really tedious, it takes months. But in the end, when you have an NDA, you are able to share information with partners, with other companies. And that's how we try to present what we're trying to do. And in transportation and tourism, it is especially challenging. I think it's challenging for everyone. But we have some specific challenges. First one is that at ADP, we're on infrastructure. So we have some sort of codependencies with companies that bring passengers in the airport and companies that take them away flying or bring them landing down. So you'll be able to create this sort of trust. And it is important because in transport, that's a formula that some airline manager gave me once, is that connectivity is productivity. The key point of every infrastructure is that its size is determined by your peak activity. And if you are able to smoothen the peak, even so slightly, then you do not have to build new capacities. You do not have to use concrete and so on that have huge economical and environmental impact. Then you can be extremely effective. So if you are able to lower the traffic that will be massed in front of your doors, if you are able to tell the train or tell the taxi that you are being late, that the baggage will not be there at some time, then you are able to lower the pressure. And by lowering the pressure, you increase the productivity of your infrastructure, and then you do not need to build new capacities. That's extremely important. Another aspect of transport is that you never take just one transport. You start by, well, you walk, that's perfectly fine and free. And then usually you take your car or a cab or a subway, then you take a train and you go somewhere, and so on and so on. And at every step, there is an opportunity for a misstep. You do not know how it will happen. Will you be able to change your mode of transportation? And when you do, everything, your whole context is usually forgiven. And it's not so good from a customer experience, and it's not so good from a societal perspective as well, when you have some sort of reduced mobility disadvantage or something like that. It's extremely difficult for you, and for the companies as well, it's extremely difficult to provide the right service to the right person if you do not keep some sort of common information. And finally, when you use a mode of transportation, well, it's pleasant to take the scenic road, but usually it's to do something, it's to do stuff. And when you're moving, it's usually very useful to have some sort of information on what's around you, what could you do, what happens at the destination. And so we need to pool information during your transportation so that you can have more services. Maybe you can see that you can make an extra stop. It's good for tourism as well, and so on. Those are the three main areas. And as you mentioned, and thank you for bringing it up, we are all the companies, as you've seen in EONIC, that is, by the way, an association and not a company. We are non-profit. All the companies in EONIC will be involved at some point in the Olympic Games. And we are all kind of aware of what will happen, so we are beginning to be a bit frightened by what's going on. And we are also industrials, and we are in IT. And we know that setting strong milestones and having objectives, goals that are really close to us are a tremendous help in order to leap forward. And we believe that by targeting the Olympic Games, we will be able to first set up some sort of actually functioning infrastructure. We'll be able to learn a lot, what works, what doesn't work. We'll be forced to be pragmatic and not try to define some sort of very elaborate target picture. And as well, by doing that, we'll really be able to use all this energy that will be concentrating in the Parisian era for the Olympics. And so, yes, we hope to be able to provide some sort of great service for the Olympics, and mainly how we will follow the delegation. You know, sportsmen, sportswomen will be here. We'll have also authorities. It will be extremely difficult for the whole transportation industry to move them around, and so that will be our main target.
So thank you. So we had a first appointment on the 15th of October, and then we have a second appointment. When then? 23rd of July, something like that. Next question is for you, Pascal. You work with, in fact, in Brussels. Can we say that? the point is really that, so you are the head of the public affairs and also in Airbus, and the point is also to know what are at stake within Airbus and what are your main challenges related to data.
Thank you very much, and very pleased to be here. I'm probably the guy who knows least about the data topic, but I know about regulation, which we'll speak about in a minute. I'll still will very quickly say what it means data in our industry, and it's just great that I speak after David and after Oscar, because you basically made the job for me. 4 examples, and then 1 point about common data space, which we envisage to create in the near future. The applications of data, the production process. Obvious, but this is something which we are increasing by the day, and the ability to collect data, to find the root causes, to correlate some events that we could not do before is immensely useful to us to avoid and to optimize the process, the energy consumption, the defect loss, etc., etc. So it goes without saying, but for us, when you plug a wing into a fuselage, you understand it's extremely complicated, you cannot miss it. Here, the data feedback loop is extremely interesting. So production is one. Second, of course, is when your aircraft are operating in the air. That is producing a lot of data. And what you can turn to here is how to optimize the maintenance, for instance. You know, better predict the maintenance. I'm not inventing anything that anyone does not know yet, but it is a very strong application for us. What has to be said, though, is, and we'll come back to that when we talk about the Data Act, a lot of data is already there and flowing. Otherwise, the aircraft would not be safe. And today, they are 99.7% safe if you talk about an A320. And that's because of the data that the airlines already get. So we're not nowhere, quite to the opposite. Third application, just to give examples like that, of course, the satellite data. The satellite data, which allows public authorities, to monitor the melting of the ice caps, the deforestation, the status, the meteorological evolutions. So all the environment questions are also very much in there, as they are in the aeronautics industry. Last but not least, and I think, David, this is really connected to what you were saying, air traffic management, the way in which you optimize the trajectories of the airplanes, is very much linked to the ability to move to a digital air traffic management, and that at the end is a potential of minus 10% in CO2 emissions. So, and that's readily here nearly. I mean, you don't need a revolution for that, you just need to do it. So those are 4 examples to give a span of what is behind. So safety, of course, environment, of course, CO2 emissions, optimization of process, loss, energy consumption, all of what you already said is there. Last point is about the common data space. We are working in an industry forum, and this industry here is not just national for us, Airbus, you know, you have 2 players in the world, and our supply chain is 50% of an Airbus is made outside of in the US, to put it like that. So it has to be worldwide. It cannot be anything but worldwide. So we immediately jump in this data space project at a worldwide scale. For us, it's called Nextera, at least for the moment. And the idea is exactly what you say. It's a supply chain, in this case. Of course, shared suppliers for many of those. It's not just purely aeronautic. If you go down the tiers, you'll find some foundries who work for other industries. So it's very much linked to you. And the topic we have is we have a lot of suppliers, 100 countries, like 15,000 suppliers maybe for the aeronautics. And the issue is the disruption in the supply chain. We have a ramp up because a lot of growth. So you need to increase the capacity to produce permanently, I mean, every day. And this is very difficult, and you have to drag the supply chain. And the problem is if you're in a vertical mode where OEM speaks to tier 1, speaks to tier 2, tier 3, you have disruptions, non-optimized flows, you have everything you don't like, and you cannot trace anything. Of course you can, but to a limited way. So replacing that vertical model by an end-to-end common data space scheme based on, you know, standards which are Gaia-X inspired, the trust, etc., all of what you all said, I mean, I don't have anything to add. That would be quite a revolution, and that is probably the thing that we are looking at in the short to medium term, but even short term, at a worldwide scale, we would imagine, even at the beginning. Voilà. So I would stop there to just give an aperçu, an overview of what it would mean, the data usage in our company.
So many thanks. So I think that we said that we needed to have use cases, and I think that with these 6 key players, we see that in fact we have a lot of use cases. So next point is for you, Véronique, because we said all day long that we need to, well, there are some challenges to share the data, and what are for you the main pillars of this data sharing?
First, in EDF, like in other companies, we operate and store a large amount of data, some of it public, some of it sensitive, and some of it highly confidential. And as I said before, digitalization means huge opportunities for energy transition, but it also comes with challenges. We need a secure, trusted, sovereign environment where we can easily store and share data. And as energy sector gets more and more digital, energy sovereignty comes with data sovereignty. We need data sovereignty in order to secure that energy sovereignty. Well, in other words, there is no energy sovereignty without data sovereignty. And in a strategic sector such as energy, data sovereignty is a prerequisite to data sharing. And I heard that in other sectors it's the same. And this is the reason why EDF is promoting the construction of energy data spaces within Gaia-X. And these data spaces being built on trusted cloud and infrastructure. For us, it is clear that data cooperation is needed. It is clear that cloud is needed, but it is also clear that data cooperation and this cloud environment must be trusted. And from my point of view, there are three pillars for the trust. First, high level of cybersecurity. Second, strong control of data. This means that we need to have clear rules related to transparency, portability, and avoid any lock-in with any cloud supplier once you've signed a contract. We should be able to switch from a cloud provider to another. So cyber control of the data, and last but not least, immunity to non-European laws. We do not want our data to be transferred in a country that is not compliant with European laws. And these three pillars are in the Data Act, and we welcome the Data Act. We believe that it will bring value to all sectors. I know that there is still work to go, and we need to accelerate together. For example, allowing a better condition for switching from one supplier to another is key, and clear rules are welcome. So we need interoperability and smart switching condition. Those points are not totally clear for the moment. We need to accelerate on it, and I suggest that we all accelerate together.
Thank you, Véronique, and it comes with the discussion we had earlier this morning, but it is quite aligned with this discussion. So back to you, Sébastien, because you have also a strong position regarding Data Act, and also the point of data intermediates that we discussed also this afternoon. So can you explain to us this position on Data Act?
Yes, farmers' organization, which fund in our society, our company, have really totally supported the data intermediary status, because they think that this is a perfect tool in order to manage an asymmetric market between small and medium companies on some oligopolistic or monopolistic situations. So, and why it is important for them. And why data intermediary can be compatible with the DNA inside farming industry. First of all, because this is regulation. I mean, maybe it's a surprise for you, but you know that farming markets were created after the Traité de Rome, and common agriculture policy. It was the first integrated European policy. And for 60 years, farmers need to or manage the risk on the market, on the raw material, on the prices. And they manage some new risk tools like Euronext. They sell grains on Euronext. They sold milk on international prices. And for all this market, there is a regulation on the top, and they know how market works between supplies and demand. And we think that speaking about data market, even if we are not speaking about the value of the data, if this is monetized data, but this is always true for open data or private data, or maybe at the end monetized data, we think that the idea or the concept of data intermediary as a third party or neutral operators in order to connect data offer and data users, data holders and data users, is totally compatible with the view of farmers. First of all, regulation. Second thing is speaking about business case. Agdatahub is the coordinators of the consortium selected by EU Commission with 15 partners present in 10 member states in order to make prefiguration about agriculture data spaces. And we all know that after an inventory, we know that there is some national platforms in Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, France, and sometimes in other member states. And we have to interconnect them. And in order to do that, we need to speak about business case, first of all, and second thing, to speak about technology. And that's why at the end of this project, we all know that one of the main challenges is to interconnect our national platforms within the agriculture data space, or maybe through an agri-food edict, because it is also an option on the table, through Gaia-X standard and Gaia-X clearing houses. So we hope that during the Gaia-X summit, we can make the demo in order to show what's going on right now in agriculture platforms. And we really think that data intermediary could be adapted for small and medium companies' interaction with global companies. But it is not the only way to implement DGA and Data Act. And we know that there will be plenty of position. But for us and for farming industry, we totally support the data intermediary status.
Okay, many thanks. And I understand that we have, in fact, a third appointment, which is in the 10th of November in Alicante, when you will have a demonstration. So, third appointment. Back to you, David, for the data intermediaries. Do you share the same view with EONA-X as Sébastien, or what do you think of the Data Act?
Well, I have to admit that at first, our reaction when we heard about the data intermediary was a bit baffled. Like, what was that? Why would I want to be this? Why should I restrain myself from using the data? The whole point of data is actually to use them, not to use them. In the end, I think this reaction stems from a very different organization from what you have. And I think, well, first of all, to have a political body like the European Union actually voting on something so complex and to have struck some sort of right balance in the end is amazing. It's really baffling. And for us, this idea that you might want to have some sort of connection between supply and demand and have the auctioneer not using the data is not really a natural one. However, it is something that might be of use to us if we want to have some sort of marketplace. We are companies, we are doing mainly B2B exchanges, not B2 some kind of C like you have in agriculture. we do not have lots of counterparts to exchange data with. So this whole marketplace is not at the core of our project. However, it might be of use. And actually, I'm not sure whether this status of data intermediary will be mandatory or not, if it will be some sort of legal qualification once you meet the prerequisite, or whether it is some sort of optional status you have to declare. It's not quite clear for me. Maybe it's clear for you. But anyway, I think it's a rather good mechanism because it's a new role that's on the table. And we might want to use it. At some point, I don't know, maybe down the road, we might want to become some data intermediary. What do we do in data spaces? It's very easy. In data spaces, at the beginning, like we are now, we are building up catalogs. That's our mission in the long run. We are building up catalogs and normalization. In order to know what to catalog and to demonstrate the value, we are defining use cases. But in the end, it's not Airbus that will define use cases. It's companies that are actually using the data space. And we are setting up a technical platform in order to be able to be there to the Olympics, like you said earlier. So we have all those roles. And if you take all those roles, whose job is it to bring supply and demand? Actually, it's no one's job. The catalog is not there to make supply and demand meet. The technical platform is only there to execute the contract and have the pipeline to exchange the data. And companies defining use cases are only defining use cases for their own needs. They will not try to reach out to new users. However, we know from previous experience that there is a very clear risk to have two-sided market mechanisms setting up when you have some sort of platform. When you have this role of making two sides, demand and supply, meet, and you can extract value from this meeting, from this role, and use this value at your benefit in order to extract more value, to use those transactions to make maybe some advertisement, maybe to extract more value. For instance, it was very difficult to unclench the grasp of booking on the hospitality sector. We know it's dangerous, so I think it's extremely healthy to have this kind of possibility in the regulation that's already there. We know in the US that they are trying to use regulation, trade regulation, in order to rebuke some very adversarial mechanisms. And we know it's difficult to use this kind of law. I think setting up new roles is a good thing, even though it's not directly useful to us as Airbus.
Yes, thank you, David. And you're right, at the end, the point is value creation. Oliver, when we discussed this week, you said, in fact, something which was really interesting. You said that, in fact, the point is not really on regulation. The point was on a market implementation, and your main challenges were on the points of automation. Can you more elaborate on that?
Yeah. So maybe 2 points before that, and then David and also the other speaker. I think you made a very, very important point. What we do have right now is not just you have one data space like Iona or what Next Era mentioned before, right? The colleague from Airbus. I think it's interesting. What can we do as data spaces together, right? We work with Catena-X on a basis for elements. We can work together to create value in a data space foundation. Also with the Airbus or the aerospace industry and automotive industry are not too different. What are our chances that we create synergies there as well to create more value in building data spaces to speed it up? Because, and this is my point I would like to convey, we have in Europe not too many chances where we make a difference in digitalization anymore, right? Hyperscalers is not a European invention. If you look at artificial intelligence, that's not a European thing that we own. If you look at quantum computing, I doubt that we own this. The data space idea is something that we as Europe can own and bring our economy into a data space environment, that we have a digital economy with our current business. So I would also focus on how can I first implement how can I support the implementation of the existing businesses and migrate to a digital economy? And this is why I wanted to mention, Martine, what you said. We try to regulate very many things and can articulate what we do not want. But in my understanding, what we actually have to more, it's my personal point, it's hard for us to really in Europe articulate and support from a legislation. What do we want? We can always articulate what we don't want, but it's very hard for us to use regulatory frameworks to support what we really want and what strengthens our economy. And I believe we can have many acts, the Data Act, the Service Act, the Market Act, and I think they all have their reasoning and they're all well thought through. But the question is, what is the result and the product Europe would like to have in the future that creates value and offers a business increase in the gross domestic product or in the company value? And I strongly believe that this starts not with regulation, but with support on how can we really make our industry. And this is what I talked to Martine about. How can we support that not every contract has to be reviewed? How can we automate the adoption? The point at BMW, my company, what I work for, who pays myself my paycheck right now, we process 30 million parts a day to build a car. 32 million. If I have legal counsel for every data contract with every supplier, BMW has 3,500 direct suppliers, we would create thousands of legal jobs on a daily basis to process that. And this is what I said with automation. How can we create a framework that scales from a legal point of view? Because data exchange is not just a technical element. It is also, we have to agree with different legal entities that data can flow. No matter if I have an act or I have a direct business relation, you need a framework that scales and can be automated at the level of billions of transactions a day. And I think this is something what we should also focus on, not just the technology and the standards, but also to make sure that it scales, because value in a data economy is only derived when there's more than one or two users on it. It scales when we have a lot of people, a lot of transactions on this. And I think this is something where we can make as Europe a difference in this world economy and also differentiate ourselves and create value for our European businesses. But I think that's something what I would like to really make the point of.
Thank you, Oliver, and Pascal. Same question. You have discussed the Data Act, and well, I have understood that you have really discussed the text with the Commission. So now, can you tell us what is your view on this text and also on value creation and on business lines?
Yes, sure. I cannot agree more with what Oliver just said about. It would be good to have the EU regulate on things that we actually need. And I must say, so okay, Data Act is like a millefeuille, we're in Paris, so we can talk about that. There are many aspects to it, some of which we're immediately convinced with. Shifting sovereignty, you talked about it. But some of which it took us quite some time to be convinced about, because and here I'm referring to the B2B data sharing specifically, because for me, from the beginning, there was an issue of sequence, fundamentally. You start by trying to build some voluntary data sharing ecosystems, common data spaces, you name it. You can find your way. This is a win-win because you don't disrupt incentives to innovate. Quite the opposite. You try to bring people together and to progress together. If that fails, then you use regulation to force a transfer that otherwise would not have happened. I mean, that's the logical order in which normally you apply regulation. This is how competition law works. This is how everything works. In this case, it was not done like that. It was done by immediately pushing a data sharing obligation without real impact assessment and on a transsectoral basis. So I can very well understand that in some sectors, there was a clear market failure to be addressed, and that was needed. And so you would not disturb the incentive to invest, but rather you would rectify a market failure. In some other sectors, and ours, I strongly believe was not the case, you would actually make the life much more complicated. If we looked at the amount of data that we gave to our users, meaning the airlines, they actually had, since the beginning, much more data than we had as OEM. So the whole myth about the OEM sitting on a pot of data which is not cascading but used to its own benefit, that just didn't exist. And no one was able to prove through the 2 years of process that was actually the case. So the issue here was, to me, imposing a regulation in a place where not only do you not need it, but you can actually distort the incentives to go further in data sharing because you're making the equation more complex. In addition to that, there was no real sufficient care, I would say, for the sensitive data. What do you do with data which is IP protected, data which basically reveals the DNA of your industrial products? Because if we say we want to be a leader tomorrow in digital products, we have to remain leaders in products themselves. And I suppose Airbus, in that respect, has something to illustrate. The data that is linked to safety, and that could, by some excessive dissemination or uncontrolled dissemination, fall in the hands of people you don't want to have, and which could facilitate cyber intrusion. This is completely possible. No sectoral angle at all. None at all in the Data Act. Not in the AI Act. AI Act is better from that perspective. Data Act, no. And what do you do about this regional question? I mean, EU regulating, no one else regulating. How do you manage that? I mean, do we want to send data to China and not think about it twice? All of those questions remained open, frankly, until the very last trialogue meeting. The very last one, which was quite, I mean, from a legislation purposes, it is puzzling that we have at the very last hour to solve so complicated questions. So yes, it was significantly improved, and thanks to the institutions for having played the game. Yet, when it's improved at the last minute, it means for a lawyer like me that probably 1,000 questions remain. So if you put that into an area where you probably have also a fragmentation of the answers at the national level, and it becomes something. I have to see how it works. Yeah, I don't want to be over pessimistic. We have to live with it, and we have to see. Maybe it works, and maybe we get there. But I must say, it's not the most predictable and iterative process I've seen in legislation making. Now, we have to implement it. It has, only for the data sharing aspect, it has implications on design, engineering, sales, customer services, legal, in the company. Just so to implement that is already a major effort. I mean, it's something on which we have a very wide multifunctional team. Of course, now we'll have to do AI in addition, which is, again, good. But let's understand that at some stage, the companies cannot swallow more. At some stage, I strongly believe, and we'll come to it probably in the third question, we have to know what we shoot for now. And I strongly believe it cannot be more regulation or extremely targeted regulation for a very specific value added. So hopefully that's the mandate for the next commission.
Exactly, next appointment, next commission. Well, election in June. Oscar, what is your view on the points of Oliver and Pascal?
Well, to summarize, I cannot agree more, but let's try to add something on top of what has been said. In terms of challenges, I would simply add that not only from an OEM, but also from an asset or equipment provider, there is some feeling of still ambiguity. And I think this morning we were discussing about uncertainty. That is a new word that I will take from the lawyer side of the discussion. But trying to understand that I think there was a good reason for building this type of regulation, but now we have to deal with somehow with complexity. complexity in terms that we have the new Data Act or Data Governance Act that have been passed, and now we will have all these national regulations. And we have been mainly discussing here about horizontal integration of supply chains. But if we want to achieve the type of use cases that Pascal was presenting in terms of optimizing the production, reducing the CO2 footprint of production of equipment and goods, that is what we have in hand as well. We cannot neglect that we will have to deal as well with vertical integration. So that means we have to look at our equipments that will be sold by companies across Europe at least, and then probably around the world. And they will have to deal with many different specificities of different countries. When it comes to integrate data in data spaces, using data spaces, using data on data spaces that have to be operating in a specific country, or when you have to connect with providers from other countries. And we have to remember that these companies are in some cases medium, small companies, that they have advanced technology, and they will have to cooperate with these large OEMs across the globe, because they have a unique product that makes this manufacturing actually a reality. And that is complex and something that we will have to see, to navigate. Today I learned that you have to wait a decade to get to know if a new law that has been passed was good or bad. Hopefully less on this case, but I think just reinforcing what I was trying to convey in the first question, there is a very important aspect in terms of bringing some continuity on a legal basis, on a technical basis, and we have to do this not only in Europe, but worldwide by design. I cannot agree more. We cannot neglect that we are living in a global environment in the manufacturing sector. So it is not enough that this continuity on legal basis, on technical basis, even on operational basis, when we were discussing before the cooperation between the operators of data spaces. But I guess how we can, or just trying to rephrase some of the conclusions of a workshop that we had with some stakeholders, some of them present in the room that we had before the summer. It is not only about continuity, it's how you make this easy, fast, and simple. If you don't reach this, then probably we may not have all the success and market impact that we expect. Someone may be left behind if we don't really work on the type of automation that Olivier or Jakob were mentioning before, but it has to be easy, fast, simple, and probably if we have to add something else, cheap. So let's see if we can manage.
So thank you. I have for you, all of 6 of you, dozens of questions. But, well, we have only 10 minutes left. So the point now, well, during the discussion, we spoke about data sovereignty. Véronique gave us a strong point about data sovereignty, and I would like to have perhaps the view of some others, Oliver or Pascal. So I don't know who, Sébastien, I don't know who wants to speak about data sovereignty. I know it's not so easy to say that, but Véronique gave us a strong definition. So perhaps somebody wants to answer. Oliver?
Yep. So we at Catena, and also I think I can speak for many other data space approaches, we only can bring the use case value if data sovereignty is at its highest level for each individual participant. So we do everything about data sovereignty for the individual user, and we strongly believe you only have sovereignty if you also know what happens with your data and what is it good for. And that's why I think we at Catena, and I think the colleague from Agdatahub, I think mentioned that before, Right now, we do not work with data intermediaries because we believe to be sovereign, you have to understand what you're doing, and you have to, at least to a certain extent, also understand what's your business process, what's the impact of your data. And so we do a lot with education of data sovereignty. We do a lot of sovereignty in terms of identity sovereignty, lots of service sovereignty. You choose your provider, you choose where your data is located and with whom you want to play. But data sovereignty, for us, it's extremely important that you have clear principles, who is working with your data, for what purpose, and you control it. We introduce technologies to support data sovereignty in terms of SSI, where we have certificates and credentials that we understand. Is the other user credible? Is the other user on the same legal framework that we use? Is the legal framework compatible? That data sovereignty is also maintained from a legal point of view. Also, is the software sovereign that people use? And so if I share my data, is the software that processes that data, is that working according to our standards and not compromising it? So my sovereignty is along the entire chain, from a just business exchange, the legal framework to that, from a technical enforcement, is given. And I think this is something what I tried to tell before. Only if those many layers work together, a data space creates real value, because we have very many simple and single solutions. But in order to create a business transaction that creates value, I think you need all layers together that you can offer real sovereignty. And is there still a long way to go and expand? Absolutely, because I think this is not the end where we are right now. But I think it's a very solid starting point from where we stand today to go to this level. Is there room to improve over the next couple of years? There's still a lot of room to improve, to make data sovereignty even more enforceable and trusted. But I think we're on a very good level, and this is the unique selling point, to protect IP by my business value and to participate in the business value that is created with data.
Thank you, Oliver, Sébastien, and then Pascal. Short, please.
Yeah, I will add a dimension about what Oliver said. Food security, or data sovereignty and food sovereignty are totally linked. This is strategical activities. We know that about the war in Ukraine, when the price of the grains was multiplied by 3. So we know that there is some impact on the price of the market. So at the end of the price for the final consumers. So we really want to say that when there is some problem about the data in China, about the grain storage capacities, we don't know what we have in China. And when we know that the international traders use data from EU farmers in order to influence the price in Chicago Board of Trade, we know that to keep control of the data is really important for EU farmers. So, okay, for business use case, but also to keep control on EU data.
Pascal? Sorry, David.
I just wanted to say that sovereignty goes both ways. I fully agree with what has been said before. And in the airport business, we are very regularly in a relationship with airports in other parts of the world that are also very aware of the sovereignty aspects of their business. And actually being able to guarantee our partners that they will keep the sovereignty, they will keep the ownership of their data, is really a business edge as well. It's a foundation of a good partnership.
Pascal?
Yeah, what I would add as an angle, not to repeat what was said, is components, products. I mean, if you want digital sovereignty, you probably need to have the chips. In the EU, you probably need also, so the CHIPS Act is clever from that perspective, let's not forget it. You probably need to want to extend that kind of logic again in the next commission, this resilience logic, non-dependence, non-excessive dependence to other quantum technologies, maybe supercomputing, high power computing. So we have to think about how to build that equipment chain. We need that in the EU as well, because that is really part of your sovereignty. For me, the sovereignty is no one outside the EU can pull the plug on you. This is what it means, yeah? So you probably need as well cloud infrastructure in the EU. You need solutions in the EU which are, of course, trusted, etc. But what I mean to say is there is an investment issue here. It's not a regulation issue. It's an investment issue with building up on what Pascal was saying. The investment is not only an EU topic, it is a national/EU topic. It's the way in which you are able to have this interplay, consolidate, you say unified and not unique. I think it's about that and finding the right balance, but making sure that you don't fragment the investment, making sure you don't fragment the willingness, the infrastructure, etc., but rather that you concentrate it at a national and EU level. Very difficult to do. IPCEI is probably not enough for that. I would get multi-country projects, to say one Brussels-ish word today, is a quite interesting animal to work with. Multinational, but with a... And then, from the regulation purpose, yes, of course, you need a EUCS, a balanced EUCS. You need to rely on what Gaia is proposing in terms of safeguards, cyber and extraterritoriality. Of course, you need that. But I would guess the quantum leap to sovereignty is probably on investment, consolidated investment, aligned strategies, national EU, number one, and then let the private sectors do the job on common data spaces and develop all of that in a harmonious and predictable way without creating, I would say, additional legal complexities at that level. So it would be a bit of that balance.
Okay, thanks. So I'm afraid we are at the end of this wonderful round table, but we will if you have some questions, it will come. So the next round, just some few key takeaways. First, we have 3 appointments. 15th of October for Oliver. We'll watch you. Then we have the 10th of November, because there is a Gaia-X summit in Alicante, and we'll have the demo of Agdatahub. Then we have, and so no, it's a 4th appointment. 9th of June, we have the European elections. And we don't know what will be the goal of the next commission, and we hope that there will be new points and so on. And then we have the 23rd of July, and then we will have NX and the beginning of the Olympic Games. So please note the 4 appointments. Well, some points that wanted also to say that this was quite really interesting, the definition of data sovereignty. The main point I would say that yes, there is a need, and we have seen that there is a lot of value on those points of business on data sharing, lot of value there. The point is also that we need to be international, but at the same time, we need to be, so what did Ivo Volman said this morning? We need to be open but assertive and not naive. So this means that in some cases we can be open and give our data to everybody, but in some cases with highly sensitive data it's not possible. So we must be open but not naive. And that's really a key point. And then, so I give the floor to you, Hubert, for the discussion.
So thank you for those of you who have been there since this morning, 9. We are now coming to the end of the day, and before we reach some conclusion in 45 minutes, I would like to use the time, and so we have lost Oliver. Is he disappearing? Okay. Anyway, let's use the time we have now to guess whether you have questions, but maybe before that, to tell you what we would like to get from this session with Eric and Jakob. You have been presented the context in a way which is zooming gradually to where we are now, which is exactly the way the main stakeholder of a pilot project are seeing the regulation. we have heard things which are really interesting. Oliver telling us, because I want data sovereignty, I will not have a data intermediary, okay? How does it work? With Sébastien telling us, without a data intermediary, nowhere for me to do my job. So it's very, very clear. The other thing we have learned today is really we are fed up to discuss what we do not want. Why don't we discuss what we want? Which is going back to the discussion at the end of the day, when you have removed all the hurdle, what makes the car going, okay? And that is still something which is linked to what we discussed since this morning. What are the elements which make any stakeholder understanding the economics of data sharing? So I would like to open, say, 40 minutes of discussion before the conclusion, primarily to have your question, but also to have your suggestion. We do have a cooperation that you have seen in action between University Paris-Dauphine and the chair, Governance and Regulation, and the Gaia-X Institute. And we are, as Jakob said, acting as a think tank, and we are very open to work on topics you believe are relevant for you. So, who is willing to take the first question or comments?
Yes, hi everybody. I'm Matthias, president of Prometheus-X, and we're building building blocks for personal data sharing. I have a question to the different data space initiatives about the value creation, because everybody described industrial B2B data sharing, but why aren't we talking about personal data sharing? Because if we talk about value creation, the biggest data market today is personal data. It's a cross-industry trend that everything goes towards personalization. Personalization of flights, of mobility, of energy flows, of food, of education, of fashion, of everything. And you can't have personalization without personal data. And so all the users of these data spaces or the clients of the users of these data spaces will be looking for personalization. So my question is to the different data space initiatives: are you working on personal data use cases? And if not, why not? Often I hear, we're afraid, there is GDPR, we don't do it. But I think that's a mistake, and there is a great opportunity to have this B2C
Give them a
use
chance
cases.
to answer before saying it's a mistake.
Sorry? No,
Give them a chance to answer before saying it's a mistake. So, would you like to start? Maybe, David, because you are directly involved in the Airbus.
Sure. Well, first of all, there are many value to be taken away from increasing cooperation between companies. And B2B shall not be underestimated. It is something that has not been developed enough, but there is tremendous value to get. There is a whole industrial complex to be built on that. So it is not less interesting, it is more difficult to develop. But I am convinced it is a very important aspect to develop. Secondly, we are not so much afraid of GDPR, because it's pretty clear what we have to do. But when you are different companies, you need to be able to agree on sharing data on your customers. And then you have two main hindrances. First one is that a company is usually a bit reluctant to share data on its customers. It's extremely valuable. It's at the core of its value. And secondly, as you noticed, I'm a CIO of Group ADP. And my counterparts in Airbus are also chief information officers or chief digital officer or so on. And so we tend to try and find the easiest way to make our companies cooperate. That should not be underestimated. This whole sociology of data spaces is important. And lastly, I mentioned the fact that when you have intermodality, change of means of transportation, then there is a bridge that we need to fill. For instance, when you have a look at business travelers, or when you have a look at people with disabilities, obviously it is very interesting for all companies to bring services to this kind of people, but we will not do it by sharing data on those people. Most likely we will do it by projecting our services close to those people and allowing those people through some sort of mechanism to articulate our services. It's something completely different. It is a bit cutting edge, but we are trying to work on that. But in order for that to work, we need to ensure that each company does not learn from the other what the other company knows about its customers. Otherwise, it's a deal breaker. So it's interesting. We're going there because there are lots of business to be done, lots of value to bring to the customers, but we need to be really clever when we tackle this issue.
Thank you. Sébastien, do you want to add something?
Really short answer. I mean, for farming industry, this is a legal company. So even if we are small and medium companies, this is a legal entity, and we are not dealing with personal data. So.
Sure. Okay. Other question or comments you would like to raise? Please help us. We have been trying to give you the best of the topic. Tell us what you need.
Hello to everyone. Eric Odi from Enedis. I have a question about extension of these regulations, new legislation, such as GDPR had an influence on other parts of the world about data privacy and pushing people to reflect on that. Do you see any sign that other continents are looking at the same topics as the EU just did, and with some form of alignment, or otherwise they go in another direction?
Who is willing to take it? Oscar.
Probably it's a little bit earlier to give a definitive answer to that question. What we can share actually is that when we have put on the table the opportunity for collaborating and shaping together how this global international data spaces for manufacturing industry should look like, the other counterparts on other parts of the world, they have felt immediately attracted and interested in co-designing this solution with us. And I think that is the best, probably the best indication that they see that there is this leadership in terms of what we are designing, what we are proposing from the European background that we have created through the years. And now there is this need to make sure that we can connect with other parts of the world. So I would say we are not still there, so they are not adopting a European let's say, legislation or directives. And to be honest, I think we were discussing a little bit with the colleagues before we were here together. I don't think the issue is that we need to impose our rules on the rest of the world. We need to find ways in which our rules really make this cooperation happen. If we try to impose, I think that probably will not lead us anywhere. Whereas this cooperation that it has been mentioned before, I think is at the moment a very practical and a clear indication that there is an interest for this to happen.
Thank you. Any other answer? Pascal?
It's a bit like what I said before. I mean, listening to all of what you're saying, my stronger and stronger opinion is for the upcoming mandate, EU mandate, the challenge is really to, I mean, it's not for us to impose our rules to the world at some stage. Yeah, I mean, we already have some, but what is it that we want to create physically and that we want to invest in? Can we just agree on that so that the EU can here give like a focal point? I mean, it is this project that we want to build on a multi-country basis. I'm representing Airbus. Airbus is a federal entity and it makes aircraft, but it was not always like that. It's always a very difficult game to get all those countries together. And the way to get all the countries together is to produce one object. That's the only way you do it. You produce, you say, I'll produce, quantum computing. I'll produce whatever infrastructure you need for a cloud, and this is what I'll have in Europe. And for that, we need investment. And once you said that, then the nations come around, and the EU comes around, and then private funding can come. And you kill that market failure of fragmentation. I mean, to me, it's that would be a real added value in the next 5 years, no?
Yeah, maybe what I observe is that the highest sense of urgency now is with the AI Act. You see many countries in the world being caught by surprise a little bit with the speed of impact of generative AI. So I think everyone is watching each other about how to get effective regulation in place in that domain. Now that's a bit the horse before the cart, because through the AI regulations, very rapidly, people will then find out, oops, I need to get more control on my data as well, and how that is collected and used. So people will get also to the data sharing agreements in other continents one day. But globally, if you look now, there is an absolute sense of urgency on regulating AI.
Yes, I'm working in a French government agency, France Stratégie, and it's a question for Sébastien about Agdatahub. I thank you for the presentation. It was very clear, and I totally agree about the data sovereignty means in your sector food and alimentation sovereignty for EU, for France. But one thing I can't see in your model is what will the final farmer or the first farmer, what will get it in the final? The value is created is for you, the platform or third parts. What will have in the final the farmer?
Thank you for the questions. I mean, at the beginning of my presentation, I explained that Agdatahub was a company funded by a farmers' organization, and they are in the governance, in the board, and the General Assembly. So they are really focused on the value for the farmers. All the use case we are building with our customers, we are in a B2B to farmers. Okay, we are not in line with the farmers directly. We help their partners to organize their data in order to distribute value all along the chain. And the goal at the end of all business case is to distribute value as more as possible for the farmers in order to increase their revenue. And there is two ways to increase their revenue. First of all, to increase the turnover, how they can sell crops more efficiently, how they can develop new turnover with credit carbon, for example, and on the other side, how to use less pesticides in order to decrease costs for farmers. If you increase turnover and decrease cost, you improve the revenue for the farmers. This is all what we are going to do with our business case.
Please.
Yes. Thank you for all the presentations. My name is Manuel Gutierrez. I work with Alberto in the Spanish National Data Office. I think we have heard not a lot about the role of member states in data spaces projects. Which is the role that you see for member states regarding this kind of projects? I mean, probably we believe that member states play a key role connecting European regulation, European bodies with specific data spaces projects. How can we work together to improve that connection? Which is the role that you see for governments in this kind of projects? Thank you.
Who is taking the lead? Martine?
I can answer because I think that, well, I will speak from the French side. There is a key role for the national stakeholders because, of course, there is a role for coordination of all the national stakeholders. And and we have this key role here. I say, I won't say the names because I see people from the French administration. But the point is really that they need to have a clear role of coordination, and also, of course, there is a point of helping the projects with funding and with also the points of the regulation. As we understood this morning, there is the European regulation, but then it is at national level that it will be operational. So we have also this clear role at national level of understanding what is the regulation in each of our countries.
David?
I would also like to stress that states also have a role like an organization authorities. They organize transport, they organize health system, they organize many things. And this role has the potential to make really good use of data spaces. So I think as well that member states can use data spaces and fuel the data spaces with business cases actually, and make it a part of their ecosystem and way of acting in the society.
Sébastien, you want to add something?
Yeah, about use case, I totally agree with that. Maybe I don't want to add complexity, but by 2 years, there will be the question of ethics. And in this, we spoke about regulation right now, but there will be a debate in the next month in order to know what is the place for member states in some legal entity like ethics. And in the status right now, member states must be majority into the ethics, and in order to develop mutualized infrastructures company. So there will be some discussion next year about it, specifically with agri-food, and I think that Spain will be part of the discussion.
Sébastien, you said too much or not enough. What do you mean, EDIC?
EDIC, European Digital Infrastructure Consortium, which is a specific status. I think that Airbus can explain more because they know how to work with member states. I mean, in EDIC, this is a status provided into the Digital Europe program in order to develop a transnational project between member states and some private entity. And the goal for that is to mutualize infrastructures for some sectorial use case, and we in agri-food sectors think that EDIC could be an option in order to develop and to implement our EU infrastructures in order for public business case, public use case and business use case. But this is another story, and we need a new event for that.
Pascal, you want to add something?
Just to complement, I think that is exactly what I was trying to shoot at a moment ago with my two a bit awkward mentions. And it's EDIC or multi-country project, you call it as you want, is basically some way in which you can build together a collaboration, a coordination between countries who shoot in the same direction for a given project, in your case, an infrastructure. Together with the private sector, of course, and this gives the dynamics, the impulse you need to then create the project. You have a governance with the European Commission in there as well, if I'm not mistaken. So that's the way, it's the instrument in which to have the EU, national, and private coordination. We have alliances and things like that, but this is on a concrete project. So this is really what I was trying to get at. Find a concrete object like what you're saying, build an EDIC or a multi-country project. I'm not exactly sure how they differ from each other. And let's progress towards that. And that is something extremely concrete which creates the movement. And then the funding comes along, IPCEI, whatever.
Just to comment a little bit about that, because we have been exposed to that, and especially in your domain, Sébastien. So if private companies are okay to join effort to create an edict, and if the European Commission is asking the government of one of this company, and the government said there are no interest creating an edict for agriculture, you are left on your own, okay? And just to tell you, this is really why something like Gaia-X is so important, because we are somehow compensating the weaknesses of the overall picture. And in the next 6 months, there will be edict created, but the effort and the magnetic field to put on the scheme will be enormous, I can tell you. Olivier.
Thanks a lot, everyone. That was a great day, highly informative. And so I represent 2 associations, a new governance in Belgium and Digital New Deal in France. And our key topic with the data spaces is governance. And the thing is, we see in the ecosystem one common problem is that basically a data space is grouping organizations to define common rules for sharing data. And we see that we still don't have a common language for those rules. We are talking about a lot of interoperability matters, but we would need, I believe, to work more on governance interoperability. And over the past few years, there has been some work from the support organizations, like the Policy Rules Work Group in Gaia, IDSA, CITRA, and so on. But talking with people working in different sectors, I feel now, and I want your view on this, that we need to put this policy rules work a lot more into the sectors, into the data space initiatives. So what is your take on this? Would you be willing to work with us, with Gaia, the DSSC, and so on this specific work?
Olivier, is it an open question or a question to the people?
To the sectors. I would like more involvement from the sectors on these specific issues. I don't know if you consider that this is an issue or not.
I guess it's a little bit too early for them to have an opinion, because some of them, like Catena-X, they are already organized fully. Iona-X, David have just left, they are organized. And the new one are trying to get information on the one existing, but it is done more pragmatically. So maybe we need to have that kind of thing for the future, but for the time being, it's trial and error more than anything else. But please, provide your paper, that would be useful. Any other question or comments? Yes.
Thank you, Hubert. It's not a question, it's just a remark with what has just been said by Olivier. Of course, there is this, and you mentioned it and you're right, the fact that these data spaces are not all at the same place, at the same position. Some are very early stages, some are starting just to even thinking about going live in a month. So we are still a bit early. And I also wonder whether also there is not another issue, that is the importance of the tradition of contract and contractual agreement. That was an important place in the Data Governance Act. Companies that were willing to share into a common into a platform provided by an intermediary were going willingly with people they would have accepted to share data with. And so normally the best way to do it is contractual discussions, negotiations, and laying down the rules. So I fully understand the need to have these governance rules, interoperability, making sure that we have some kind of a framework that would work or provide at least, a framework for every type of common data spaces. But you will be maybe facing years, decades, centuries of practices, commercial practices within these economies and these sectors that usually takes the form of a contract. So I think one of the best way to go there and to obtain this kind of interoperability governance rules is actually to embed and reintroduce again what is already proven to work in contracts right now. But it's just a suggestion, I'm having just an idea.
Thank you. Any other question or comments?
Okay, test. Thanks. My name is Silke Weich. I'm from Cologne, Germany, and I'm representing Identity Valley Research. We are actually doing, well, at the same time, we are also consortial partner in one of the Gaia-X projects called Team-X, which is a sister project of Health-X Data Loft. And we are doing research on frameworks, how to measure trustworthiness in digital projects. My question is about, to the people here on the panel, if you are thinking about how data fairness and cybersecurity and transparency and all these buzzwords can be measured within your ecosystems. Because of course you want to convince other players that should come into the networks, and of course you want to gain their trust. And what do you do about that? How can that be measured in the future?
Sébastien, I guess you are the one.
I mean, first of all, I mean, this is the rules. In a way, this is a question of governance. In a way, I mean, in our data space, all our subscribers have their own digital identity, as a legal identity and personal identity based on public registry. I mean, France Connect in France, which is a national identity, and you have the register of legal entity. I mean, Registre National des Entreprises. So, I mean, by design, I mean, we know that all the participants into the data space have their own digital identity. First of all, this is the first question. The second thing is, by the end of this year, all the data offer will be certified and signed in the digital way. And the third thing, as digital data intermediary, there will be some registry of a transaction in order to be totally transparent, speaking about the transaction. So we use digital identity, data offer certified, and transaction registry. Three main components for us as a trust.
Bert?
Yeah, it's probably not a fully mature domain where you ask and answer. So I think there is not so much quantified trust measures. But one concept that in Gaia-X we've been thinking about is that very often the trust comes out of a chain. It's not just one party you need to trust, it's a combination of parties you need to trust. And also your service may be composed of elements from different providers, from different service providers. And so how do you aggregate the trust? And maybe there are two very trustable providers in there and one with a bit less trust. So what is now the combined trust of those three? And in Gaia-X there's been some thinking about working with trust indicators where you could also aggregate the trust of all the participants in a chain. It's not a very mature concept yet, but apparently, I mean, clearly there is a need for people to be able to have more transparency throughout an entire chain and a number of participants. I can imagine in a supply chain you very rapidly have that as well. Not only trust of the party, but also the quality of the data shared, the reliability of the data shared. If somebody says, my components are of a certain quality, how do you even know? Is there a certification you can test? Even 3, 4, 5 tiers in the supply chain down, in quality of a food chain. Also there, how can I trust the contributors further down in the chain? So I think the data space concepts would be very useful if we can also work on aggregated trust scores in order to respond to your question.
Okay, Johan? No. Okay, is there any other question before we conclude? No? So, oh, sorry.
There was a great comment before about, what do we want as opposed to what do we not want? And I think that's a very unusual question one hears in Europe. So what about, how's the Data Act, I was wondering, helping us in removing the friction, which was mentioned, like for intermodal mobility, which has been talked about a lot. When I came down here, I would have liked to just look at Université Paris, Dauphine. I don't know where it is, but I'm just going to click on it and I just buy a ticket, which gets me through taxis and all those things automatically to me. That's one thing. Then the other thing is like, how about European-wide trading? So you buy something, that says like, I guarantee deliver versus payment, not on huge financial contracts, but, getting something delivered and, I'll get it delivered. So in practice, this doesn't really work. I mean, we know in principle we have it. VAT payments, I mean, it's like, I talk to, on a daily basis to people in, some people in Poland, they say, doesn't work. I don't get my VAT back, even though in principle should work. So does the data spaces, there's lots of these examples where Europe could be leading, there's EBSI, there's the IAT, at the thing. How do we get there where you're going to have not a moonshot like quantum computing, everybody loves that, so, or fusion, right? We also need those, but how do we get these things, moved ahead, maybe with digital twins that we're talking about here, and tokenization. Let me say it like this: I was a little bit disturbed about data. What was it? Sharing progresses with speed of trust. That is a depressing message. Okay, so I would say data progresses with the speed of control. Right? Trust is good, but maybe control. So, for example. Great to have your trust, but I also have your collateral, okay? So, like a tokenization of collateral, various kinds of things, we're talking about lots of these things. I was just trying to hear from you, how do we get at the European level, thinking about this is where we want to go. This is really not a competition inside of Europe. This is great to achieve, and maybe we're better prepared than the Americans for that. It's a mess when it comes to property rights over there. How do we get and move that agenda through the Digital Act, or maybe through some progressive regulation and not something that prohibits people from doing things?
I have a good news for you. Catena-X is exactly targeting what you said. I want to go there. How can I get there? Mixing taxis, train, bus, and so on, and give you all kind of elements, even if one of the mode of transport is delayed or something, they provide you with alternative. Okay, so if there is no other question, I would like first we applaud the panelists. And I would like that we conclude this long day, asking first Jakob to give his conclusion. I will give my conclusion, and our host will give the last one.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for coming and participating. In my last remark, I want to catch up this topic that Fritz Henglein just mentioned, and it was mentioned earlier also by Oliver Ganser and others, and that is what I also in my intervention called European leadership. So instead of seeing all this as a defensive action and a defensive mechanism, it really needs to be seen in an offensive and positive way, that there's really a huge opportunity here to not only secure European values in an area of life that is becoming really so basic that it's impossible to imagine upholding those value systems without doing something. So, I mean, that's a positive, and it's not just a defensive attitude that one should have towards that. and also now speaking as a computer scientist, maybe, and I'm aware that that's only one relevant area among many others. But it is one where we have for too long been willing to leave leadership to other parts of the world, in particular up until now, of course, the US with its big tech industry. It's understandable that we have been doing that. And it's also, of course, difficult for European companies to take up that baton, because creating technology of that nature, like huge data platforms or very advanced algorithms or software infrastructures, is not on the critical path of their own value creation, but it needs to be seen that those topics are moving closer and closer, if not to the perceived value creation path, then to the path of necessity. That is, if you're not able to play in a leading way in this space, then the rest increasingly doesn't matter. I mean, I know that this is a little aggressive and it's forward-looking, but then that's also what we want to be doing in the Gaia-X Institute. So European leadership should be seen as something that we want, and also as something that the topics we've been discussing today create a unique opportunity for. In a smaller way, I was illustrating that, tried to, from the perspective of creating technology that makes it easier to be compliant and so forth. There's also the topic of AI that was taken up, a huge driver, which, as it was said by Bert, I think that other countries will need to follow up on that. And in that regard also, we're taking on, there's a possibility of taking on a leadership role there, but it needs to be followed up with the willingness to really go aggressively at it, and also to see that the technological aspects of these technologies is something where we need to be willing and prepared to take a leadership role. And I think the ecosystems and the data spaces are an interesting and important structure for doing that, even with a sort of a diverse landscape of industries that we need to work from. Thank you.
Thank you, Jakob. So let me conclude on my side by thanking all of you, but also sharing with you what we have learned from this day. I guess the first finding, which has been repeated at several occasions, is like that: removing obstacle does not create the necessity of data spaces. You need to have something else. So Oliver said it by saying, stop talking about what we do not want. Let's say what we want, typically business increase or creating value. And that has been also explained very well in the investigation done by Bert and Lucas. Use cases are essential for overall scaling and also the value of data intermediary. So that is prompting us to revisit the question of the economics of data sharing with its multiple aspects. I was extremely interested to hear Oliver to say there is no need of data intermediary if you want to keep your data sovereignty. If you add on to that, Véronique told us that there is no energy sovereignty without data sovereignty, and you said there is no food sovereignty, Sébastien, without data sovereignty. So all that is part of the same story, which is having a positive vision of where we want to go. I guess what is extremely interesting there is that we are entering in a period which will last, if I take the date of Martine, until the 9th of June. There will be no more commission, and there will be an interesting challenge for the new commission. The previous one has piled a lot of regulation, and the new one has to roll their sleeves and make it happen. So it's not what I would call a very ecstatic task to do. So we need to give them some kind of additional nurture on that. That is the first thing. Therefore, revisiting economics of data sharing in all of its aspects is, for me, extremely important. Bert said it's about scale. If you look at multi-sided market, they have explained very well that in a multi-sided market, you create scale from each part of the side, and when you increase one side, the other one is increasing. So all these mechanisms are known in B2C. They have to be invented in the B2B world. I would like also to rely upon the great interest, Jakob, you have created on automated compliance by design. I mean, you said explicitly Europe should take the lead in that kind of business. What does it mean? If I understand properly, automated compliance by design, the one building the regulation should make it compatible to a design which in turn will be used by automated compliance. I bet it has never been, in any case, part of the thinking of the people who have created the compliance. And I would like to give the last statement, something I discussed with Boris before he left. The very last statement of Ivo, which he did not complete, was there will be a gigantic talent shortage in these domains. That is something which starts with another thing, which is if there is a talent shortage, we need to invent a curriculum about these topics, and this curriculum need to be taught to the new engineers, the new law people, the new economics. And in that respect, having done that in the past, you need to be extremely aggressive. And today, you have had some kind of a very nice, multifaceted picture of what it is they have to understand. I'm sure you are like me, your head is almost exploding. At the end, how can we teach that in a curriculum which is simple enough to be taught to people who have no clue of what you are talking about when entering the room? I guess it is one of the key elements. Europe will not succeed in those domains if we do not have people properly prepared. So with that, I would like to hand over to you, Eric.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you both Hubert and Jakob, and of course also Martine and Bert for having collaboratively collaborated to the organization of this very nice conference. And I hope we will have further occasion to continue to work on it. Before closing the conference, I would like to make some comments. The first comment is that the economics of data sharing, as you mentioned, Hubert, needs to be better explored. And in fact, there is an interesting combination when you develop data sharing of short-term and long-term effects. So the short-term effects are typically the effects that were mentioned, for instance, by our colleague from ADP, which is basically that when you share data, you are able to more efficiently exploit the existing capabilities, whatever they are. And you are able to basically benefit immediately from direct economies and more generally efficiency gains. But then there is another thing that basically occurs when you share data. When you share data, you are able to analyze those data, and you are able to enhance your processes. You are able to learn. And in fact, this is a cumulative process. The more you share data, the more you learn, and the more you are able to reshape your business models, your processes, your logistic chains, whatever, and you are able to innovate, to provide better services, to reorganize the industry. And of course, this lead to point out the importance of the kickoff conditions to allow the sharing of data. In fact, you have to provide incentives to the various users and the various producers of data, all those shareholders to share the data, and you have to try to benefit from fair sharing principle of cost and benefits. That this was mentioned at several occasions today. And in fact, there is in a sense, an interesting approach from that perspective, thanks to those legislation, so the European legislation. Because in fact, if you think about it, it's a legislation that allows experimentation and bottom-up experimentation. It's not imposing a model to any industry. In fact, you have a kind of natural way for business communities, for industries, etc., given their difference, to organize themselves and to try to trigger this potential virtuous loop. And in addition, you will have some competition because you will have different models emerging, and you might observe either a fusion, a merger among the different initiatives, or you might observe competitive selection of the most efficient one. And so this is not the usual way, in fact, we consider policies in those domains where, you have those buildings of large infrastructures that should fit to any community needs. It doesn't work like that, and maybe it's an interesting perspective, and it's a different way of envisioning the spirit of this policy. But of course, in order for this policy to succeed, we have to develop our learning capabilities. And this is true, of course, for the players, for the stakeholders in those different business communities, for those different types of intermediaries, but it's also true for the regulators, because the regulators, they will play a strong role in allowing, in fact, this process of collective learning, collective innovation to work or not. And this is probably a huge challenge. This is a challenge for the governance of those communities, whether the self-governance of those communities or the governance of those communities by the governments, by the member states. And of course, we'll probably, given the different logic of the different industries, come out with different solutions for different types of value chain. And then, of course, it leads back to the logic of hosting this conference today in a university. I think the academic community, where either it's organized in the context of the Gaia-X Institute, or in the context of the chair, or in the context of the many other institutes that are working on the digital transformation, the academic community could help to trigger this collective learning process. Of course, we'll also benefit from all the litigation by the judges and by the legal players, but I think the academic community can also play a role, whether this is the academic community computer science or in social science. So thank you very much, and I hope we'll have further occasion to discuss and to build collectively on those issues.